This program contains copyrighted material and is not for resale or redistribution. Welcome to the Stanislaus National Forest. I'm Gary Hines, and I'll be with you all the way from Pinecrest to the top of Sonora Pass. It's about a 2-hour drive covering 36.5 miles, but if you don't wish to go that far, stop whenever you like. You should now be parked in front of the Summit Ranger Station. Before you begin, a few instructions. This tour is timed to a normal driving speed of around 45 miles per hour. It also allows for slower sections and turns. In other words, always drive safely. But if you get behind traffic and I start talking about a feature you haven't gotten to yet, stop your player until you see it. Then turn it on again. That should get you back on track. Or if you get ahead of me, slow down a bit. As you drive along, there will occasionally be silent parts, but that's normal, so keep your player running, and no adjustment of the volume is necessary. When it is time to stop your player, I'll tell you. A few safety items. You won't be able to stop at all points of interest because it may not be safe to pull over. Also, please be considerate of traffic behind you and let others pass when necessary and safe. So, let's begin. And turn right onto Highway 108 as you leave the parking lot. One half-mile ahead is the small community of Strawberry, established before the beginning of the 20th century. Just before it, you'll cross the South Fork of the Stanislaus River. Not far above the bridge is Strawberry Dam, owned by PG&E and completed around 1916. Behind the dam is Pinecrest Lake, a popular recreation spot. The stored water there is for power and other domestic uses.
Nathan, I've got gold over here.
In 1856, gold miners built 3 reservoirs in the South Fork Canyon. The water was used for hydraulic mining in the motherlode towns of Sonora and Columbia. The lower of these log dams stood just behind today's Strawberry Dam, 1 mile upstream to your right as you crossed the South Fork. The ancestral Sierras were unlike today's mountains. Only about 3,500 feet high, they folded out of an ancient sea. The rivers ran north and south. Over time, wind and rain eroded most of the range, exposing beneath a large batholith of granite about 80 miles wide and 400 miles long, the new Sierra Nevada. 9 million years ago, this slab of rock cracked along its eastern flank and slowly tilted toward the Pacific. That's why today's range rises over 10,000 feet, with rivers running east and west. Coming up on the ride is the first of 3 road cuts that contain rounded, water-smoothed rocks. These road cuts may be cross-sections of a stream channel from the ancestral Sierra. Water from ancient storms may have flowed here over 9 million years ago. Look closely, particularly at the third road cut, the large one coming up on both sides of the road, and notice the layers of volcanic ash and mud among the rounded rock. Water was not the only liquid to flow in this channel. On top is glacial debris, called till, indicative that glaciers, which melted about 20,000 years ago, were the last major event in this geologic storybook. Coming up on your right, just before the Herring Creek Road sign, is a field of large boulders. Look quickly. Brought here from many miles away by glaciers, these rocks were left behind when the ice melted. Often differing from the ground on which they rest, geologists refer to them as glacial erratics. Just ahead, as the road curves to the right, are road cuts through volcanic ash and mud, similar to that ejected by Mount St. Helens. Notice the concrete-like consistency.
Ahead on the right, you'll pass Leland Meadows Road. Not far beyond that, also on the right, are the Bumblebee Recreation Residences. Now, listen carefully. About 3/10 of a mile beyond the Bumblebee Tract is Cow Creek Road. You want to slow down there and turn onto it.
Cow Creek Road should be coming up on your right very shortly. Again, slow down and turn onto it. You're now driving into Cow Creek on the old Mono Highway. Once built for wagons around 1865, this road brought many high country travelers to the Sonora Pass area.
Many of these beautiful trees have been here for centuries. Some have been thinned a bit to help protect wildlife and cabins from fire. The trees with red stringy bark are incense cedars. If someone's taking notes with a wooden pencil, it may have come from this type of tree. Others with puzzle-looking bark are ponderosa and Jeffrey pines. Those that look like Christmas trees are white firs. All three are used in construction. By the way, lichen can grow on any side of a tree, so it makes a poor compass. On the right are more recreation residences. Although in the National Forest, they belong to private individuals. The use of the land, though, is authorized by a permit from the Forest Service. Just ahead, the road dips and drops down into a small drainage. As you come up on the other side, pull over next to the marker and stop. But keep your player running. One of the first ranger stations in California was located in the open area to the right, near the large incense cedar. Built around 1903 for $65, it sported a rock fireplace, a beautiful manzanita staircase, and front steps hand-carved from a single round of wood. Charles Taggart, a ranger here in 1905, once wrote,
"We were pioneers in the Forest Service. There were no roads. Trails had to be cut and passage made for saddle horse and pack horse. Everything was primitive and grand. Sure changed up there. When we were there, nothing between Sonora and Strawberry but sugar pine and long barn."
They administered cattle range and kept sheep herders out. In those days, cattlemen had most of the grazing rights. Fires, too, had to be fought, but the Forest Reserve extended from Lake Tahoe all the way down to Yosemite, and there were only a handful of rangers to cover the territory. So, when fires started, cattlemen and lumbermen helped put them out. Today, on the other hand, and when practical, prescribed or controlled fire is employed to reduce fuel loads in the forest and to bring historic fire use back to the Sierra.
"100 feet to the left of the ranger station was the barn. It was built around 1877 when a stage station stood here. At that time, mining activity in Bodie, on the eastern side of the Sierra, revitalized traffic on the road, but when the Bodie boom collapsed in 1881, the stage line went out of business. Across the road, the rangers grazed their livestock and kept a vegetable garden. Feel free to walk around and explore, but please leave everything as it is for others to enjoy. A Forest Service archaeologist explains why.
The Archaeological Resources Protection Act of 1979 makes it a felony to collect artifacts from federal lands, Part of this is because federal lands contain most of what little remains of our cultural heritage in the form of sites and historical ruins. These ruins belong to everybody. The more we preserve and leave in place, the more we'll have to work with in the future when analytical techniques are better developed.
So enjoy your stroll through the past. Stop your player now and start it when you return to your vehicle. Start your engine and continue forward on Cow Creek Road. A short ways ahead, you'll want to bear left toward Highway 108. Again, be sure to bear left. When you get to the stop sign, wait for the music to start, then turn right onto Highway 108.
Coming up on the right is a road cut through mudflow materials similar to that seen earlier. At the end of the road cut, also on the right, are more glacial erratics. Look quickly or you'll miss them.
Not far off, down in the canyon to your left, the old steam trains of the Pickering Lumber Company carried logs out of these mountains. Much of this area was logged by rail beginning in the 1920s and continuing until 1965. The late Manny Marshall, a former Pickering engineer, tells more.
So I asked old Mr. Collard if I could go firing on the railroad, and he says, you go over there in the roundhouse and go to work. He says, now. That gave me a good opportunity to learn something about the steam engines. So that's how I started on railroading, and I was only 18. Then in 1920 is when I went out firing on the road, April the 16th of 1920.
Most of the locomotives were shays. Unlike the more common rod-type engines, shays were geared very low for extra power. The large trees with irregular branches are sugar pines. Their cones are the longest in the world and hang like Christmas tree ornaments. The wood is used in construction and for making shake shingles. Coming up on the right is a road cut through granite rock. Granite is the heartstone of the Sierras. Notice the erosion. Water reacts chemically to break the granite down into soil, where much will eventually wash into streams and be carried out to sea. Someday, these mountains may erode completely away. More granite can be seen elsewhere along the roadway.
On the left are California black oaks. Their acorns were food for the Miwok Indians who roamed these mountains prior to the arrival of the whites. Gentle and non-aggressive, they lived in the lower foothills during winter and moved to higher elevations in summer to hunt and gather. The late Brown Tad, a local Miwok, tells more.
Of course, in September, the acorn drops down on the ground, Before that, if they want greener ones, of course, Indians would knock it with long sticks, same as you would walnuts or almonds, knock them down. Then after you crack a big bunch of it, well, then you had it dried. Then after that, that's ready to pound. They sat down the way you're sitting there and get that pounding rock. Then they pound all day long with that. It's flour. It gets floury. So that's the way they made their acorn bread. That's how it was done.
On the left is Cascade Creek Campground, one of many on the Summit District. Depending on facilities, some require a fee, others are free. If you're staying at one, please treat it with respect. Maintenance is very costly. You're about to pass through another road cut of granite, that building block of the Sierras.
Through the trees, you may spot the Dardanelles.
You'll be able to stop farther up the road at Donnell Vista for a better look. This several million-year-old volcanic formation is an eroded lava flow that filled the old Stanislaus River channel of the ancestral Sierras. The softer material of the surrounding countryside eroded, leaving the petrified channel high and dry. The volcanic vent was to the east near Bridgeport and flowed all the way to Knight's Ferry near Oakdale. Remember, this happened before the uplift era, when the old Sierra summit was farther east. The Table Mountain Formation near Jamestown is part of this same lava flow.
Coming up is a large granite outcrop with many cracks, known locally to some as Bashford's Rocks. Here's a great example of what geologists call jointing. These joints or cracks are more vulnerable to weathering and sometimes erode the rocks in odd shapes. The rocks on the left look a bit like teeth.
yours, will you please? Sure. 1 minute, Wanda. By the way, how's Bobby? Is he over the flu yet?
A pair of old phone lines once crossed the highway here. These were put in long ago to connect areas above Cow Creek with the outside world, back when you still had to call the operator. On the right, you'll pass by the road to Eagle Meadows. On your way back or another day, you may wish to turn in here and visit the Bennett juniper, the largest western juniper in the world and owned by Save the Redwoods League. About 12 miles in on Eagle Meadows Road, it stands 86 feet high with a diameter of 13 feet. This ancient tree is estimated to be over 3,000 years old. A high-clearance vehicle is recommended. Check at the ranger station for more information. Off to the left, you might catch an occasional glimpse of the middle fork of the Stanislaus River Canyon, carved both by water and glaciers.
On the right are trees growing out of granite. These hardy dwellers sprouted from soil blown in by the wind that accumulated in cracks. Their roots act as wedges and aid in nature's decomposition of the rocks. The magnificent Dardanelles should again be in view. At one time, some geologists believed this formation was the remnant of a volcanic vent, and it certainly has that appearance. More recent examinations, though, have tended to discount that theory. Coming up on the left is Donnell Vista. Turn in, park your car, and walk down to the overlook. The views of Donnell Reservoir and the Dardanelles are well worth it. Please stay on the trail. This keeps you from falling off cliffs and helps prevent erosion. From the overlook, notice the cliff downstream and across the canyon where the old Columbia and Stanislaus Water Company once hung a flume 200 feet above the valley floor. This flume ditch and tunnel system was begun in 1854 and completed in 1858. It took water from near the inlet of today's reservoir and carried it some 60 miles to the town of Columbia for use in hydraulic gold mining. It was built as a result of a miners' strike against the old Tuolumne County Water Company, which was charging exorbitant rates. So the miners organized and dug their own ditch. It was an amazing engineering feat and accomplished through blood, sweat, and beans, as told in the account of one of the miners.
Cold and hunger were our almost constant companions. It might be interesting to know what our bill of fare generally contained. First we had beans, just plain beans. Next came bean soup, then boiled beans, then by way of change, baked beans. Then we had beans a la mode. For dessert, we had cold beans. In fact, beans were the alpha and omega of our cuisine.
Enjoy your walk and turn the player on again when you turn left back onto Highway 108.
On the ride is part of the old Sonora Mono Highway. When gold and silver were discovered over the Sierras, citizens of Tuolumne County decided to build a road connecting Sonora with the boom town of Aurora. Supplies from the west were essential, and existing routes were inadequate. Finally, around 1865, the road was opened, just in time for the gold fields to play out. So, until the Bodie boom in the 1870s, it got little use. The state took over the road in 1901, began to improve and pave it in the 1920s, and later realigned and widened it to its present condition. This section, called the Patterson Grade, was the most difficult to build and is named after J.D. Patterson, the road's primary contractor in 1864. The original route is over the side to your left and was a bit more harrowing than today's. The late Babe Michelle, born in 1895, recalls the old grade.
It was a real narrow and they had turnouts on it, very steep and very treacherous. And you meet a car, you'd have to back up, or somebody would have to back up to one of those turnouts.
Just ahead, around the corner, is the beautiful valley of the Clark Fork Canyon. Its broad U shape was carved by glaciers. Now rivers continue the erosion process, adding their distinctive V shape. On your way back, take a look at the Dardanelles again and see if you can pick out the lion and the elephant. At the bottom of this grade, the road forks. Be sure to stay to the right on Highway 108. The other is Clark Fork Road, which dead ends after about 10 miles. Along the way, though, are two campgrounds, beautiful scenery, and an impressive granite outcrop called the Iceberg, where the road stops. Clark Fork Road was to have been a highway over the Sierras. Some say there were even plans to tunnel through the mountains. At any rate, World War II stopped construction at Iceberg Meadows, and the project never resumed. It's a nice drive, though. Try it sometime at your leisure.
Remember, take the right fork. Soon after, you'll enter the Brightman Recreation Area and pass by more recreation residences and campgrounds.
The large granite ridge looming ahead and to your left separates the Clark Fork and Brightman valleys, both glacially formed. In 1841, the Bartleson Bidwell Party, who were the first immigrants to cross the Sierras into California, passed through this area. Although their exact route is not known, it's possible they came down this ridge or one like it. Lost and starving, they finally arrived safely in the San Joaquin Valley. In the party was a young 17-year-old girl named Nancy Kelsey, the first white woman to cross the Sierras. Nicholas Dawson, another member of the party, recalls Nancy as she carried her 1-year-old baby daughter through these mountains.
Once I remember, when I was struggling along trying to keep Monty from going over, I looked back and saw Mrs. Kelsey a little way behind me with her child in her arms, barefooted, I think, and leading her horse. A sight I shall never forget.
On the 1st of August, 1841, we camped on the summit. It was my 18th birthday. We had a difficult time to find a way down the mountain, and at one time I was left alone for nearly a day, and as I was afraid of Indians, I sat all the while with my baby in my lap on the back of my horse, which was a fine racing animal. It seemed to me while I was there alone, the moaning of the wind through the pines was the loneliest sound I ever heard.
Coming up on the left is the middle fork of the Stanislaus River. Since around 1910, with the completion of Relief Dam, located about 12 miles upstream, this river has been used extensively for power generation and irrigation. Relief Dam, for its day, was one of the largest earthen dams ever constructed.
On the right is the Brightman Station, used by the Forest Service for high country fire protection and public service. Also coming up on the right is the Dardanelle Store and Resort. Located on National Forest land, the owner is authorized to use the land and must pay the government a fee for its use. Just past the resort, you'll cross Eagle Creek and soon after the middle fork of the Stanislaus River, which feeds into Donnell Reservoir. Just after crossing the middle fork, there's a turnout on the left. We won't stop there now, but on your way back, you may wish to pull over. On the downstream side are steps to an overlook with a view of the wooden bridge replaced around 1990. It's the last known wooden bridge of this type in California. At the upper end of the turnout, walk across the highway and over to the river, where you'll see some pretty amazing rock work for the old original bridge, probably done when the road was first constructed in the 1860s. Please use caution, for it's a long drop into the water.
On the right is a hill of stone. These basalt rocks, through erosion, have broken off a lava flow, which you can see near the top of the pile. Geologists call this a talus slope, referring to the large angular boulders. Coming up on the right is the Columns of the Giants, a geologic site. Pull in and park your car. This interesting and beautiful feature is found at the end of an easy 1/4 mile trail. As lava cools, its surface cracks into polygonal patterns. If conditions are ideal, these cracks can sometimes extend deep into the flow, forming a clumped mass of hidden columnar shapes. Over time, recurring freezing water expands and wedges these cracks apart. Eventually, chunks of the lava break off, leaving behind a face of apparent columns on the remaining flow. If you choose to walk the trail, please stay on the path to minimize erosion and also for safety. Rattlesnakes have occasionally been seen here, and since they like to roam about in chaparral, staying on the trail is definitely in your best interest.
Stop the player now and start it again when you turn right back onto the highway.
More talus and columns are off to your right. Once again, on the right is the middle fork of the Stanislaus. In the large clear area to the left is the site of the old Douglas Station, probably built in the 1860s. Also called Hayes Ranch, it was used as a way station for weary Sonora Pass travelers and for teamsters en route to the mines in Nevada. Here too, For Whom the Bell Tolls was filmed, starring Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman. Coming up on the right is the Douglas Picnic Ground, a great place to have a picnic, by the way. Directly across the road once stood Douglas Resort, torn down in the early 1970s because of health and safety problems. The only remnant is a circle of stones where a flower garden once grew.
The national forests were set aside by Congress in 1905 for a variety of uses, including the new practice of scientific forestry. Although timber production reached its peak after World War II, far fewer timber sales occur on the national forest today. Those that do roughly span about 10 years from planting to harvesting, and may also be used to achieve fuel reduction or forest restoration objectives. Timber sales can occur at higher elevations like where you are now, and also at many lower locations. Coming up on the left is Baker Station, once a stage stop along the Sonora and Mono Toll Road back in the 1870s, then used for years by the state for road maintenance workers and their families. In partnership with the Forest Service, the facilities are now utilized by Columbia College as a field campus called the High Sierra Institute. The buildings are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, deemed worthy of preservation for future generations. You'll soon be passing the road into Kennedy Meadows. There you'll find a pack station, overnight accommodations, and a trailhead into the immigrant wilderness. There are also 2 Forest Service campgrounds nearby. Just beyond, the road becomes rather steep and windy. If you don't care to continue, this might be a good place to stop. Otherwise, get ready. You are about to start the climb to Sonora Pass. Like I said, the highway gets a bit more exciting, so be sure the old jalopy works and the brakes are in good shape for the return trip. You are now in for some spectacular scenery. From here on, don't worry about keeping your speed around 45 miles per hour. You won't be able to anyway. Just drive safely. The timing should allow for slower portions. The steep grade here is essentially as it was back in the horse and buggy days. The late Lottie Pedro, who used to go with her father over Sonora Pass, recalls what it was like in a wagon.
Then we'd all get out, and then we'd have to hold the wagons up like this in the back so the horses could get their breath. Otherwise, they'd roll back on them, because they couldn't. Well, they wouldn't get any rest if they just had to stand there and hold the rigs, because the roads are rough, all rocks and stuff. I used to love that because we could look at the country while we were. I loved the country, the outside. Now, some of them didn't care whether they looked at the country or not, just to look at the road and get someplace. But I just loved the outside, the mountains and everything. It was always fascinating for me. I loved it.
Soon you'll be passing through a narrow road cut. Just past it on the right is a turnout. Pull over there and stop. This turnout is called Queue de Porca Overlook, or Quay de Porca. Years ago, Basque immigrants herded sheep in these mountains. Supposedly, the name is a loose Basque interpretation meaning tail of the pig and refers to this curvy portion of the road. If you wish, take a moment to enjoy the view. Put yourself in the place of the immigrants who struggled with their wagons across those white granite sheets before you in the 1850s, hoping for a new life in California. Stop the player now and start it again when you pull back on the highway.
Ahead, beyond the timbered ridge in the foreground, is a peak of more mudflow material. Geologists refer to these deposits as lahars. Coming up on the left is East Flange Overlook. It's on a sharp turn, so I don't recommend you stop there until on your way down. This formation was a landmark for pioneers who took the Walker River Sonora route. The trail was nearly impassable and only used from 1852 to 1854. In fact, some said you could follow it just by the broken wagon parts and bones of dead livestock. Ahead are several trees with red bark. These old incense cedars have been here a while. While most are found lower down, a few, like these, grow at higher elevations. Across the canyon to the right are chutes where avalanches have stripped the land of vegetation. Snowfall is very extensive in the Sierra, and avalanches are a continual hazard for winter enthusiasts. Soon, as the road turns left, you'll be able to look directly into an impressive canyon of Sonora Pass. In a short time, you'll be passing through it.
Coming up shortly are trees called western junipers. Some found in this area are thousands of years old. Because of their red, stringy bark, people often mistake them for cedars. Found at higher elevations, they survive in very harsh environments. The berries of some junipers are used to flavor gin.
Along the roadway are cottonwoods and aspens, those slender trees with a white bark. Sometimes difficult to tell apart when young, aspen's leaves have a more heart-like shape, while cottonwoods are more spear-like. Aspens rarely develop from seeds, and instead reproduce through sprouts. Aspen country was a favorite of early-day trappers because aspens meant beaver skins for men's hats in the East.
A tip of the hat to you, madam.
And a good morning to you, sir.
Looming above and to the left is the impressive granite wall called the Golden Staircase. Dead Man Creek is off to the right. On the right, you can see the actual wagon road built in the 1860s. This portion was left in its original condition because of a later realignment of the highway.
Coming up on the right is a turnout area. Pull over there and stop. Across Dead Man Creek, named after a man who froze to death here in the 1800s, you can get a better look at the old wagon road. A profile view of the mammoth wall of rock across the highway can be seen farther up the road. From there, its name, the Golden Staircase, becomes more apparent. Stop the player now and turn it on again when you pull back on the highway.
Notice the large rocks that have fallen from the wall to your left. Frost wedging, the relentless expansion caused by water turning to ice, pries these boulders off the granite face. This same process is also at work on the columns of the giants. Coming up is a high, dark mud flow. Notice the erosion, evidenced by the cuts and channels on its face. No doubt glaciers carved away much of its mass in the past. These flows occurred at a time when the crest of the Sierras was much lower and to the east. Then, about 9 million years ago, when these mountains uplifted and rose to their present height, much of this old volcanic material wound up at higher elevations. Here, the majesty and power of nature are quite apparent. At the left-turn switchback coming up, look out to the left and notice the Golden Staircase. When the sun strikes just so, it takes on a golden hue. On the right is Blue Canyon Creek. Its small waterfall flows impressively in the spring. Notice as you approach the timberline the change in the trees. As the environment becomes harsher, they begin to look a bit more scraggly. Ahead is Sonora Peak, rising to 11,462 feet. It's the highest point in the immediate area. Off to the right is a peak of more volcanic material.
Coming up is an alpine meadow, usually lush and green in the early summer and filled with gorgeous wildflowers. The Sonora Pass area has many of these beautiful grassy havens.
Now you are beginning to pass through the timberline.
Coming up, turn left at the Sonora Pass Trailhead sign and enter the parking area. Here you'll find a restroom and picnic tables, and a short walk to the east offers inspiring views. Near the restroom, you'll find access to the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs from Canada to Mexico and is one of the most famous hiking routes in the world. If you like, take a stroll on it for more impressive scenery. I hope you've enjoyed the trip, and so does the Stanislaus National Forest, for here our journey ends. If you have any questions or comments, let the people know at the Summit Ranger Station. For more information on the Sonora Pass area, join the summer guided tours in Pinecrest or attend the evening programs at the amphitheater. Also, check at the Ranger Station for other informative options. Thanks again, enjoy your drive back, and have a safe and pleasant visit. Besides those speaking from oral history interviews, other voices were Rusty LeBlanc, Gary Hines, Bruce McCarter, Mary Farrell, Debbie Wilson, Jim Mullen, Dave Bonneau, Susan Russell, and Lorna Scazzagini. Musical selections were by the Music Bakery, Scott Joplin, Brown Tad, and Gary Hines.